Her hand touches his arm. Gold light. String quartet. 200 people in the room. Ji-hoon. He turns. 3 seconds of silence. I don't know you. His voice is quiet. Controlled. Please leave. The woman next to him goes still. A man 2 feet away turns his head. Sandra doesn't move. The security guard's hand closes around her arm. And then she laughs. One sharp sound. Right there in front of everyone. Funny. Loud enough for the circle around them to catch every word. You didn't forget my name 3 weeks ago when you used it to wire $8,000 into my account. The room changes. Not loud. Just a shift, like a current switching direction. The woman next to Ji-hoon looks at him. The man 2 feet away stops pretending he isn't listening. Ji-hoon doesn't speak. One muscle moves under his eye. That's it. Security walks her out. At the door, the light catches the ring on her right hand. Ji-hoon sees it. He leaves his own event. Before we continue, I'm curious about something. Are you watching this alone? Or is someone sitting next to you right now? And where in the world are you watching from tonight? Tell me in the comments. Welcome to Afro-Korean Memories TV. 8 months earlier. Chicago. February. The restaurant doesn't put prices on the menu. Ji-hoon picked it. He always picked, and Sandra had long stopped minding. 11 months in. She wasn't auditing it anymore. She'd stopped asking herself if it was real and started thinking about what came next, which was its own kind of answer. She was telling him about Singapore. 2-year contract. Good title, good money. She wasn't sure she wanted it. She wanted him to say, don't go. She would have stayed. She'd already decided. Ji-hoon set down his wine glass. You should take it. She looked at him. I'm moving operations back to Seoul. Permanently. By March. Even voice. No apology in it. The timing doesn't work. I'm not asking about timing. I know what you're asking. Then answer it. He looked at her for a long time. I think this has run its course, he said. I think we both know that. She picked up her water glass. Put it down. No. You know that. Those are different things. He said it then. For clean sentences. Rehearsed. She listened. Asked 2 questions. Got 2 answers that told her nothing. Then she folded her napkin, set it on the table, and walked out. He didn't follow. He texted once, 3 days later. I handled that badly. I'm sorry. She read it. Said nothing. Moved on. Which turned out to be something she had to do every day, sometimes twice. By summer she had new clients, a new routine. A friend named Bae Yoon-ji who'd moved to Chicago 3 years earlier and worked in financial consulting, who showed up with food when Sandra stopped leaving the apartment, who asked every few weeks with just the right amount of casual. Do you still think about him? In September, Yoon-ji said, Seoul. Finance conference. March. Kim Woo-jin is keynoting. You've been trying to get in front of him for 6 months. She slid 2 printed invitations across the table. I already have us registered. Sandra looked at the invitations. 10 seconds. Okay, she said. Yoon-ji smiled. Good. Sandra didn't say his name. Yoon-ji didn't either. But they both knew. And Yoon-ji not saying anything was exactly the kind of thing a good friend does. So Sandra didn't think about it again. That was 6 months ago. Now it's 9:08 p.m. and Sandra is standing in a corridor of the Grand Hyatt Seoul, the ballroom doors behind her, and Ji-hoon is walking toward her from inside. Leaving his own event, leaving 200 people, leaving every bit of the composure he just used to publicly destroy her. And he is walking with the focused, deliberate pace of a man who just saw something that changed his calculation entirely. He stops 2 feet away, looks at the ring, then at her face. Already locked in? Hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and tell me in the comments, should she go with him? Because nothing about this is what it looks like. Sandra doesn't move. I'm not going anywhere with you, she says. I know. He glances back at the ballroom doors. I need you to do it anyway. Ji-hoon. She says his name level. No heat in it. You just told 200 people you don't know who I am. I know what I said. Then you understand why. There's a man at the bar inside. He keeps his voice low. Dark suit. He's been watching you since you walked in. He was in this hotel last night too. Different event, same floor. I clocked him at 7:52, before you even arrived. She doesn't look back at the doors. That has nothing to do with me, she says. He pulled out his phone and checked it the second you touched my arm. He has your photo, Sandra. She's quiet. 5 minutes, he says. Then you can walk away and never see me again. But right now you need to move. A couple pushes through the ballroom doors behind them, laughing, not paying attention. Ji-hoon steps back, waits until they're gone. She moves. They take the service corridor off the main hall. Ji-hoon knows where it is without looking for signs. Through a door marked, staff only, down a stairwell, and out into the hotel's east parking structure off Solaro, cold concrete. Low fluorescent light. The sound of Itaewon traffic somewhere above them. He stops near a pillar. Checks his watch. Types something on his phone. Talk, Sanders says. He looks at her. The ring. That's what you want to start with. Who knows you're here? That's not your business. Sandra. An edge she's never heard before. Not anger. Something harder. Who knows you came to Seoul? Yunji. My assistant. One client contact. She watches his face. Why? He presses one hand flat against the concrete. Looks at the ground for a moment. When I ended things, he says, it wasn't because things had run their course. She says nothing. There are people I've done business with. People who monitor personal relationships. Mine specifically. He glances toward the structure entrance. When we were together, you were on their radar. When I ended it, I made a case that you were irrelevant. A closed file. Nothing left to monitor. He stops. They believed that. 8 months ago. What people? People who don't like loose ends. Ji-hoon. It's the only answer I can give you right now. She crosses her arms. You broke up with me to protect me from some group you won't name, and you expect that to land. I'm telling you that you showing up in Seoul tonight means one of two things. He looks at her directly. Either they reopened your file on their own, which means they never fully believed me, or someone told them you were coming here. Someone who knew it would matter to me. He pauses. The man at the bar is not a conference attendee. His badge is real, but his registration is only 6 days old. He's here because of you, which means someone put him here. The words sit in the air. Who are these people, she asks. He's quiet for a moment. Haesong Capital, he says. She knows the name. It was in her conference prep files. Legitimate firm, major regional player, offices in Uedo's financial district, the kind of name that appears in serious filings. She'd seen Ji-hoon's name adjacent to theirs at least 3 times. The woman, Sanders says. Last night. You're sweet. Ji-hoon doesn't look away. That's not what it looked like. I watched the footage. What footage? Someone emailed it to me at 2 a.m. Anonymous account. She walked out of your room at the Grand Hyatt, and you stood in the doorway and watched her go. Something moves behind his eyes. Someone sent you that, he says slowly. Yes. Before the gala. Yes. He turns away, puts both palms flat against the pillar, stands like that for 3 full seconds. Ji-hoon. He turns back. That footage was bait. Someone wanted you angry, wanted you to walk in there and make a scene. His voice is tight now. They set it up. The email, the footage, putting you in the same room as me under the worst possible conditions. Sandra feels something go cold and clear in her chest. Who knew you were coming? He asks again. Quieter. She thinks. One name sits at the front of the answer. She doesn't say it. Not yet. How long have you known I was here? She asks. I saw your name on the conference attendee list 4 days ago. He straightens up. I flagged it. Started watching. I told myself it was probably coincidence. But you didn't reach out. No. You were just going to watch from a distance while I had people on the floor all day. The man in the dark suit appeared at 7 p.m. That's when coincidence stopped being an option. Sandra looks at the ground. Thinks. The wire transfer, she says. $8,000. 3 weeks ago. Ji-hoon waits. It came from an account with your name attached. Routing through a Singapore intermediary. She looks up. My compliance team flagged it. I returned it within 48 hours. I didn't send you any money. I know that now. She keeps her voice flat. Someone wanted a financial record between us. A paper trail. Jilted ex-girlfriend accepts money from wealthy businessman. Shows up at his event, causes a scene. She says it like she's reading a report. If you denied me and I'd left quietly and cried in my room, that story would be sitting in someone's file, ready to use. Ji-hoon is watching her face. You walked into that ballroom already knowing, he says. I walked in knowing about the transfer. Not the rest. The laugh, he says. You weren't reacting. You were executing. I was ready to damage your night if you gave me a reason. She meets his eyes. You gave me one. A long beat. I need to know who told you about Seoul, he says. And I need to know what these people actually want and what happens to me now. Fair, he says. Not here. She doesn't argue that. She's been in this parking structure long enough. My room, she says. 1 hour. If you're not there, Everything I have goes to the financial crimes desk at the conference, and I let them sort it out. That would complicate. I know what it would do. 1 hour. She turns toward the stairwell. Sandra. She stops. The ring. His voice is careful. Is there someone? She doesn't turn around. 1 hour, Ji-hoon. She goes through the door. Back in her room at the Grand Hyatt, 14th floor, overlooking the Han River, Sandra deadbolts the door, kicks off her heels, and sits on the edge of the bed. She picks up her phone, scrolls to Yoonji's number. She stares at it. Yoonji had the invitations. Yoonji knew about Ji-hoon, knew everything, because Sandra had told her everything, because that's what you do with a friend you trust completely, which is exactly what you'd exploit. She puts the phone face down on the nightstand, changes out of the gold dress, jeans, dark sweater. She is not finishing this night in evening wear. She opens her laptop and pulls up the anonymous email. She isn't a tech person, but she knows enough to click through the header data, and there it is, buried in the routing information. A Chicago IP address. Not Seoul. Chicago. She writes it on the hotel notepad, stares at it. 40 minutes later, 3 knocks. Even spacing. She checks the peephole. Ji-hoon. Different jacket. Carrying 2 coffees from the lobby downstairs, which means he didn't come straight here. He took a detour, which means someone else was watching her door while he was gone, which tells her exactly how seriously he's taking this. She opens the door. He hands her 1 coffee without asking. Scans the room once. Windows, the balcony door, the hallway behind him. Then sits. The man in the dark suit, he says. He left the building at 9:47. Went straight to the street, got into a car on Solaro, and was gone. My people lost him at the second intersection near Namsan. So he knows I left the ballroom with you. Yes. She sits across from him. Tell me what Haesong Capital actually is. He looks at his coffee, then at her. On paper, legitimate. Mid-tier regional investment firm. UADO offices, clean audits, real client list. The kind of name you'd see in any serious Seoul filing. He pauses. Underneath that, it's a clearinghouse. Money moves through it from sources that don't want tracing. The people who actually control those sources don't appear in any document. And you? I did structural work for them. Financial architecture. I didn't know the full scope when I started. By the time I did, I was far enough in that leaving required negotiation, not resignation. When did you get out? 18 months ago. Took 4 months to complete. He looks at her steadily. The condition of my exit was that I sever every personal connection that could be used as leverage. Relationships. Anyone who knew enough about my life to become a pressure point. I was a pressure point. You were someone I cared about who had no idea what she was standing next to. He says it evenly. Yes. She takes a slow breath. So you ended it. Told them you were done with me. They believed you. For 8 months. Until I walked into that ballroom. Until you walked into that ballroom. He puts the coffee down. Someone made sure you'd be there, Sandra. The footage, the wire transfer, getting you into the same room as me. That's not improvised. That's someone who knows both of us well enough to engineer it. She picks up the hotel notepad, slides it across to him. The anonymous email came from a Chicago IP address, she says. He reads it. Doesn't react loudly. But the stillness that moves through him is its own reaction. Yoonji is in Chicago, Sandra says. He looks up. She's the one who told me to come, Sandra says. She had the invitations. Ji-hoon puts the notepad down. He doesn't say, are you sure? He asks, how long have you known her? 3 years. We met through a mutual contact, Choi Dong-hyun. He's in Chicago finance. Been there about 6 years. Sandra holds her coffee cup without drinking from it. Yoonji moved from Busan. Set up her consulting practice. Dong-hyun introduced us at a client dinner, and we clicked immediately. She pauses. She was the person who got me off my couch after you. Showed up with food. Kept me functional. For 8 months, she's been the most constant person in my life. Ji-hoon is quiet. Which is the perfect position, Sandra says, if you want to monitor someone and eventually move them. Yes. She knew everything about me. About you. About how I felt. Sandra sets the cup down. She knew that if there was a reason to come to Seoul, she'd know exactly how to frame it, so I'd say yes without thinking. Kim Woo-jin. Real person. Real conference. She handed me a legitimate professional reason wrapped around a personal one, and I said yes inside 10 seconds. She looks at the notepad. I didn't think about it again. Ji-hoon stands. Moves to the window. 14 floors up, Itaewon's lights run south toward Hanamdong, and past that the Han River cuts the city in half, black and white. If Yunji is connected to Haesong, he says, she's been in your life since about 3 months after you ended things. Sandra says it before he does. Someone placed her there. He turns from the window. I need to verify it before we move. A Chicago IP address alone isn't enough. What else do you need? A financial connection between her and Haesong. Communications. Proof of instruction. He comes back toward the center of the room. I have someone who can pull that. It'll take until morning. And tonight you don't contact Yunji. You tell her nothing has changed. You behave exactly the way she'd expect you to behave after what happened in that ballroom. He looks at her, humiliated, wanting to leave. You want me to perform falling apart. I want her to think the operation went exactly as planned. And if she reaches out, tell her it was a disaster. Tell her you want to go home early. Give her what she needs to hear. Sandra thinks about that. About Yunji's voice, the warmth in it. 3 years of Sunday calls and late dinners in Wicker Park and one long night at Northwestern Memorial when Sandra's mother was in the hospital and Yunji sat in the waiting room for 4 hours without being asked. She catalogs every conversation, every careful question about Ji-hoon. Every time Yunji had circled back to "Do you still think about him? What would you do if you ran into him again?" And Sandra had thought, she's being a good friend. Okay, Sandra says. You'll need to stay in this room tonight. I wasn't planning to go anywhere. He moves toward the door. She doesn't stop him, but she asks, the woman. Last night. The suite. Who is she? He pauses. Hand on the door. Her name is Min Seo-yeon. She's been working inside Haesong's secondary accounts for 6 months, cooperating with my team. He keeps his voice even. She came to the hotel to warn me. An asset had been activated in Chicago. She didn't know who it was targeting. He looks back at Sandra. Now we do. Sandra takes that in. The footage someone sent me, she says. They filmed her leaving your room. They knew she was in contact with you. Which means this isn't just a pressure operation against you. His jaw tightens. They're moving against my network too. They're further along than I thought. He opens the door. Ji-hoon. Quiet. He stops. Why did you actually follow me out of that ballroom? You could have let security handle it. The cleaner move was to stay inside. He's still for a moment. The ring caught the light when the guard turned you. He says it carefully. And I thought. He stops. Starts again. It doesn't matter what I thought. The door closes. Sandra sits in the chair for a long time without moving. The Han River is a dark ribbon past the window. Namsan Tower lit up red above the city. Seoul doing what Seoul does at 10 p.m. Running, building, burning energy like it has unlimited supply. She thinks about Yunji. She thinks about 3 years. If this is gripping you, and I think it is, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you never miss the next drop. And tell me in the comments, did you see Yunji coming? Because the worst betrayals always wear the friendliest face. 2:07 a.m. Rain comes off the Han without warning. Hard and immediate, sheeting down Solaro, the streets going dark and slick. Sandra is still awake. Laptop open, going back through everything she can remember about Yunji Bae across 3 years. The way they met. The dinner at that Korean-American fusion place in River North. Choi Dong-hyun at the head of the table, Yunji arriving last, apologizing for traffic, sitting down next to Sandra like it was always going to be that seat. She pulls up Yunji's LinkedIn. Polished. Consistent. 8 years of history in financial consulting, Seoul to Chicago. Solid recommendations. Nothing wrong on its face. She pulls up Choi Dong-hyun's number. Then she puts the phone down. Not yet. 3 knocks. She checks the time. 2:09. Checks the peephole. Ji-hoon. Wet. No coffee this time. She opens the door. He comes in, shakes rain from his jacket, drapes it over the desk chair. Sits. Puts his phone on the table between them, a document already open. Bae Yunji, he says. She filed a consultancy registration in Singapore 16 months ago. Shell entity. 1 client. That client's holding structure traces back to a Haesong subsidiary in 3 steps. He swipes to the next page. 6 payments over 18 months. Last one was 10 days ago. $14,000. 10 days ago. For days before Sandra booked her flight. Sandra sets the phone down on the table. Looks at the wall. She thinks about the night at Northwestern Memorial. Yunji in the waiting room at 2 a.m., cup of vending machine coffee going cold in her hand, not saying anything, just being there. Sandra had thought, this is what real friendship looks like. She thinks, maybe some of it was. Then she thinks, that's not the question right now. What do they actually want, she asks. Not from me. From you. What's the real goal? Ji-hoon leans back. When I left Haesong, I didn't leave empty-handed. I took documentation, account records, transaction logs, names. Enough to dismantle the network completely if it reaches the right government hands. He looks at her. I kept it as insurance. They've been trying to locate it for 18 months. They think I know where it is. They think that if they manufacture enough pressure, put you in a room with me, make it ugly enough, I'll do something to protect you that exposes a connection I'm not supposed to have. A contact, an account, a location. He pauses. Or they think that if they destabilize you enough, you'll lead them to me without knowing it. Except I don't know anything. Except you don't know anything. Which doesn't help you if they don't believe that. She stands, goes to the window. Rain is hitting the glass hard. Below, Seoul is empty. A lone taxi moving through the intersection at Noxapiong. Its light reflected in long orange streaks on the wet road. Across the river, the lights of Mapogu blur and run. So what do we do? She asks. Ji-hoon comes to stand near her. Not close, just near. I have a short window before they realize tonight didn't produce results and move to the next phase. His voice is low and precise. I need to transfer the documentation to a location they can't touch. I've been building toward that anyway, but I need 48 hours and I need them watching me here in Seoul, distracted, managing fallout, while it happens. Which is where I come in. I'm not asking you to. Tell me what you need. She turns from the window. He looks at her for a moment. I need you to meet with Yoonji tomorrow morning. She'll contact you. She'll be worried the operation pushed too hard, that you're too damaged to control now. You need to give her the opposite. He keeps his voice level. Emotional. Close to the edge. Tell her you want to go home early. Give her a version of last night that sounds like total collapse. I need her to relax. I need her to send a clean report upstream. Asset is destabilized and exiting Seoul. No further action required. He pauses. That buys me the 48 hours. And after the 48 hours, you get on a plane. You go back to Chicago. This is done. She looks at him. Is it? He doesn't answer immediately. The ring, she says. You keep coming back to it. You told me it was yours. I know what I told you. She crosses her arms. What did you think when you saw it? He holds her gaze. I thought. She moved on. And I thought. Good. And then, he stops. Say it. And then I thought. If something happens to her in this city because of decisions I made without asking her, I don't know how to carry that. He says it flat, like a fact. That's what I thought. The rain hits the glass. Sandra nods once. Turns back to the window. I'll meet with Yoonji, she says. But I want the documentation already safe before I walk into that conversation. I want to know it's in government hands before I sit down across from her. Why? Because if something goes wrong and this unravels, I want that material somewhere they can never reach it. She glances at him. That's not a condition. It's what makes sense. He considers it. Okay, he says. By 4 a.m., they have the full plan. Ji-hoon has a contact inside the Korea Financial Intelligence Unit, a senior analyst named Oh Jae-won, who has been building a parallel case against Haesong for 11 months. The documentation transfer will happen through a physical dead drop. No servers. No digital trail. Jae-won's team will receive the package at a location in Mapogu at noon. Sandra doesn't need the location. She doesn't ask for it. What she needs is what to say to Yoonji. They work it like a scene, not word for word. Yoonji is sharp, would clock scripted if it felt scripted, but beats. Sandra should sound tired, slightly undone, not crying, but close. She should be questioning whether to stay for the last day of the conference. She should give Yoonji the line Yoonji is waiting for. I made a mistake coming here. Ji-hoon runs her through it, asks questions the way Yoonji might. Sandra answers. He tells her when something reads wrong. She adjusts. He's methodical and she lets him be, because this is exactly the kind of problem he thinks in. At 4:40, he gets up to leave. You should sleep, he says. Later, he picks up his jacket from the chair, still damp at the shoulders. The way I ended things, he says, looking at the jacket rather than her. I said things I didn't mean. Made it uglier than it needed to be. He straightens the collar. I did that deliberately. I needed you angry enough to cut contact completely, so there was nothing left for them to monitor. He pauses. I need you to know that. Not because it changes what happened, just because it's the truth. Sandra is quiet for a moment. It changed plenty, she says. He looks at her. Not toward you, she says. Just, it was a hard 8 months. You should know that too. He holds her gaze. I know, he says. He goes. At 9:22 a.m., Yunji calls. Sandra is on the bed. Cup of tea, hair down. She picks up on the third ring. Hey. Yunji's voice is careful underneath the warmth. I heard something happened at the gala last night. People were talking about it at the hotel breakfast. Are you okay? Not really. What happened? Sandra walks her through it. Edited. Emotional. She keeps her voice thin and unsteady, not crying, just worn down. She describes seeing Ji-hoon across the room, the crowd shifting, her hand on his arm. What he said. Oh, Sandra. Yunji exhales. I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. I shouldn't have pushed you to come. It's not your fault. It is, a little. I knew he'd be here, and I thought. She stops. I thought it might be good for you to see him and realize you were over it. I didn't think he'd be that cold. Sandra keeps her breathing even. I keep thinking about just going home tonight, Sandra says. There's a flight at 7. Maybe that's not the worst idea. Yunji's voice shifts. Decisive, gentle, exactly the right combination. You got what you came for professionally. Kim Woo-jin's team loved you. And if he's doing the closing keynote, he is. Then go home. I'll cover the last session, send you everything. You don't need to sit in that room. Yeah. Sandra exhales slowly. Yeah. Okay. Take care of yourself. I'll check in after you land. The call ends. Sandra puts the phone on the nightstand. Sits with the quiet. That was 3 years of warmth in a voice. Every bit of it sounding exactly like someone who cared. She sits with it for exactly 2 minutes. Then she picks up the second phone, the one Ji-hoon gave her at 3 a.m., and types 4 words. She bought it. Noon confirmed. The response comes in 11 seconds. Noon confirmed. Stay in room until 1 p.m. She puts the phone in her pocket. Goes to the window. Seoul below is sharp and enormous in the late morning light. Namsan's forested slope to the north. The towers of Gangnam visible past the river to the south. The city running in every direction without stopping, indifferent and alive. She thinks about how much of her life in Chicago she's going to have to look at differently now. Her gym. Her neighborhood cafe. The referral that brought her to Dong-hyun's dinner table 3 years ago. How far back does the architecture go? She stops that thought. It goes nowhere useful. At 12:51 p.m., the second phone lights up with one word. Done. She exhales for what feels like the first time all day. She picks up her regular phone. Books the 7 p.m. flight from Incheon to Chicago O'Hare. Then she goes to the closet and starts packing. The gold dress stays on the hook. She can't bring herself to fold it. She leaves it hanging there like something she's decided not to carry. She's packed in 20 minutes. One bag. She moves efficiently, makes no noise, leaves the room looking clean. The kind of packing you do when you want to be gone before you change your mind. At 1:15, 3 knocks at the door. Ji-hoon. Try this time. He looks like he hasn't slept, but it sits differently on him than it would on most people. Just a sharpness to the eyes, nothing fallen. It's done, he says. J1 received the package at 12:40. It's in government custody. Formal proceedings begin within the week. When that happens, Haesong's asset movements freeze. Everything in place stops, including whatever they had planned next for me. Yes. She nods. Yunji. She'll be identified in the proceedings. Cooperative disclosure is her best option, and her lawyers will tell her that within 48 hours of the filings going public. He looks at her steadily. She won't be in a position to do anything to you. You'll receive a deposition notice. Your lawyers should know it's coming. It's manageable. Choi Dong-hyun. Passive contact. Used without full knowledge. Probably walks away clean. He pauses. I'm sorry about that. I know you'd want accountability there. I want to understand how far it went. She picks up her bag. I'll figure out the rest later. He steps aside from the doorway to let her through. She gets her passport from the inner pocket of her bag, checks it, pockets it. The ring, he says. She stops. I told you. There's no one, he says. It's not a question this time. She looks at him. No. He stands in her hotel room doorway. Same shirt from last night with the collar slightly open now. And she can see the weight of the last 18 months on him if she looks. Not in his face exactly, but in the way he holds himself. The kind of contained stillness that comes from carrying something heavy for a long time without putting it down. She thinks, he made a decision about my life without asking me. She thinks, it also kept me alive and I didn't even know I needed keeping. She doesn't know how to hold both of those things in the same hand yet. When this is finished, he says carefully, when the proceedings are done and it's actually clear, I'd like to call you. She looks at him. I'll think about it, she says. She walks down the hall. The carpet of the Grand Hyatt's 14th floor is deep blue with a thin gold border, and she watches it pass under her feet, and she doesn't look back. He doesn't call after her. At Incheon International, Sandra clears security, finds her gate in Terminal 2, and sits down. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the flat tidal plains of Incheon stretch west toward the Yellow Sea, the last of the day's light going red across the water. It is a genuinely beautiful view. She looks at it for a while. She texts Yunji, heading home. Thanks for everything. Talk soon. Yunji responds in 3 minutes. Safe flight. So glad you're taking care of yourself. And then a blue heart. Sandra stares at that blue heart. She screenshots the entire message thread, 6 months of it, and emails it to herself. Then she forwards it to Ji-hoon's secure number with no message attached. She puts her phone away. Boards at 6:50. Seat 14A. Window. Seoul drops away beneath her as the aircraft banks south over the Han, and she watches the city go, the river dark below, Lotte World Tower catching the last light, Gangnam's grid of streets lit up like a circuit board, and then clouds, and then nothing. She puts on headphones, closes her eyes. She thinks, I came here to prove I was over something. She thinks, I don't know what I proved. She thinks about a blue heart from someone who was paid to send it. Then she stops thinking and lets the engine noise take over. Chicago. 11 days later. Her apartment is exactly as she left it. She dropped her bag at the door when she landed, showered for a long time, and slept until the following afternoon. The days after that moved in a specific order. Lawyers first, then a second meeting with the lawyers, then a call from a number she didn't recognize that turned out to be a federal investigator named Special Agent Park Hyun-soo, attached to a joint task force with the Korean FSS. She went in the next morning. The meeting was 2 hours in a beige room in the federal building on Dearborn. Agent Park led it. Precise, patient, the kind of person who lets the silence after a question do the work. He confirmed what Ji-hoon had told her and filled in what Ji-hoon hadn't. Haesong Capital's secondary network had been running for 11 years. The money came from 3 main sources: a pharmaceutical distribution kickback operation across Southeast Asia, a construction procurement scheme in which Park Hyun-soo named 4 Korean conglomerates without blinking, and a private intelligence firm based in Macau that sold financial executives' personal data to competitor firms. The combined annual flow through Haesong's hidden accounts was north of $200 million. Ji-hoon had been brought in as a structural consultant in year 9. He'd understood the surface operation clearly. The depth of it took him 8 months to uncover. His exit negotiation had lasted from October to February, the exact 4 months before he sat across from Sandra in that restaurant and said, I think this has run its course. He listed you as a former personal associate with no ongoing involvement, Agent Park said. Haesong accepted that assessment. When you appeared in Seoul at their own network event, it triggered an automatic verification protocol. They sent someone to determine if I was still a connection. They sent someone to determine if you'd been used as an asset, intentionally or not. Whether he'd communicated through you, moved documentation through accounts in your name, or used you as a cutout. Park looked at his files. The wire transfer 3 weeks prior to the gala was a test. If you retained the funds, it created the paper trail they needed. I returned it in 48 hours, which was inconclusive either way. He looked up. You were credible as both innocent and complicit. That's why the surveillance continued. Sandra sat with that. Bae Yunji, she said. Ms. Bae has been cooperative since her identification 6 days ago. Park's voice was even. She's provided a full account of her instructions, her handlers, and the timeline of her placement in your life. How long was she actually watching me? Park paused for just a moment. From the point of her placement, 19 months. She'd known Yunji for 36 months, which meant 17 months of something that preceded the arrangement. She tried to decide if that changed anything. She was still trying when she left the building. Outside on Dearborn, the February wind came off the lake hard and direct. She pulled her coat closed and walked. Past the daily center, past the river, not going anywhere specific, just moving. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Osei. Male voice. Older. Careful. My name is Lim Sang-cheol. I'm calling on behalf of a client who asked me to contact you. What client? He asked me to tell you. He said to tell you he found the right words this time. A pause. He said you would understand what that means. Sandra stopped walking. She was standing on the Michigan Avenue Bridge. The Chicago River moved below her, gray-green and fast. A water taxi pushed upstream against the current. Ji-hoon had said, at 4:40 a.m. in her Seoul hotel room, I said things I didn't mean. I made it uglier than it needed to be. He had not said he'd found better words. He had not said he was looking for them. He'd like to send you something, Lim Sang-cheol said. A letter. Physical. He said he prefers not to use current digital channels for personal matters. Yes, Sanders said. Send it. The ending of this story is about to hit harder than anything that came before it. Subscribe right now so you're here when stories like this drop. Like this video, it costs you nothing and it means everything. And comment below, do you think she should open that door when he comes? Because I genuinely want to know what you think. The letter arrives 4 days later. Not a standard envelope, a slim padded sleeve, delivered by a courier from a firm Sandra has never used. Inside, one folded page, handwritten in Korean, with a single typewritten sheet clipped to it. The translation. She sits at her kitchen table in the early morning. Coffee. The radiator ticking. The city outside her window still half dark. She reads the translation first. It does not begin with an apology. It begins with a fact. I have tried to write this since February of last year. I have 19 drafts. This is the first one I'm sending because it is the first one that does not attempt to explain itself into acceptability. He writes about Jeju. Not romantically, precisely. A specific evening on the coast, the wind changing direction, her hair crossing her face, and her not brushing it away, just leaving it there. He writes, I watched that and thought something I didn't have a word for. I still don't. I'm telling you about it anyway because you deserve the specific truth more than you deserve the version I can articulate cleanly. Then, I told myself I was protecting you. That was true. I also told myself that was the only reason. That was a lie I told myself because the other reason was easier to live with. You were the first thing in years that didn't require management. Every other part of my life existed inside an arrangement, a negotiation, a structure I had to maintain. You were outside all of that. You just were what you were. Ending it was also, I am telling you plainly, an act of cowardice. You should have been asked. You deserve to be asked. I'm sorry I decided for you. She folds the translation, picks up the Korean original. She can't read it, but she looks at the handwriting. Even, unhurried, the characters precise. And she thinks about him sitting somewhere in Seoul writing 19 drafts. And she thinks about the parking garage and the hotel room, and 4:40 a.m., and the look on his face when she said it was a hard 8 months. She puts both pages on the table, goes to the window. Chicago below. Tuesday morning. The lake flat and gray past the buildings, a freight barge moving slowly north. The city going about its business, which has always been her favorite thing about it, the complete indifference of it, the way it keeps moving regardless. She goes back to her phone. The secure number Ji-hoon gave her in Seoul, she never deleted it. She types, I got the letter. Puts the phone on the counter. Goes back to her coffee. 21 minutes later the screen lights up. She lets it sit for another 30 seconds. Then she picks it up. I'm in Chicago. She reads it again. I flew in this morning. I'm outside your building. I'm not going to ring up. I wanted to be in the same city when you read it. That's all. You don't have to come down. Sandra sets the phone on the counter. She stands in her kitchen. The radiator ticks. Traffic moves on the street below. She goes to the window and looks down. He's there, standing on the sidewalk across from her building in a dark coat, hands in his pockets, looking up at the building without looking for a specific window, just looking. A man standing in a Chicago morning, in the cold, not performing anything. Just there. She watches him. He doesn't move, doesn't check his phone, doesn't pace. He waits the way someone waits when they've decided that waiting is the only honest thing left to do. She thinks about the decision he made for her, the one she didn't get a vote on, the one that cost her 8 months she can't get back. She thinks about 19 drafts. She thinks about the Han River from the 14th floor, and Jeju, and a piece of hair she didn't brush away from her face, and a man watching that, and thinking something he still doesn't have a word for. She picks up her phone, types, "Before I buzz you in, answer me one thing." She watches him from the window. She can see the moment he reads it, the small motion of his hand reaching into his coat, the slight shift of his shoulders. He types. Her phone lights up. "Anything." She types her question, looks at it, sends it. He reads it. She watches his face from 14 floors up, and she cannot read his expression at this distance, cannot see the detail of it, just the shape of a man standing still in the cold reading something on a phone. And then he looks up, not at her window, just up, at the building, at the sky, and he stands like that for a moment. Then he types. Her phone lights up. She reads his answer. She reads it again. She sets the phone down on the windowsill. She looks at him on the sidewalk for 5 full seconds. Then she walks to her door. Her hand finds the intercom button, and she stops. Because his answer, his one answer to her one question, was not what she expected, and it was not what she'd hoped for, and it was not what she feared. It was something she doesn't have a word for either. Her finger rests on the button. The city hums 14 floors below. She presses it. That's where it ends. Right there. Because what happens when that door opens, that part belongs to them. But I want to know what you think. Did she press it? What did she ask him? What was his answer? Drop it in the comments right now. I read every single one, and the best answers might just become the next story. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to Afro-Korean Memories TV so you never miss what drops next. Share this with someone who needs to watch it tonight. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.